Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to this exclusive interview with the Vice President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Vice President Dr. Jagdeo. The reason I requested this interview is, as you know, the Vice President and the government of Guyana has been very transparent and even holds a press conference every Thursday. But too many times it seems that the conventional media, or what we will call the regular media individuals, would have their own agenda. So the people's issues and concerns sometimes are passed over. And hence I requested this exclusive interview with Dr. Jagdeo. Dr. Jagdeo, thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
I know you hold a press conference every Thursday, but a lot of times there are issues or the questions that you're asked and that you're willing to answer also, because you have a wide understanding of what's going on in this country because of your background. Those questions are loaded, or sometimes not much thought is placed into them, hence the need for us to really narrow down what the issues are and how it's affected. My question for starters today, and this is the question on the mind of a lot of Guyanese, there seems to be, by certain sections of media and the individuals behind these media entities, deliberate attempts to mislead people who, to some extent, are not as literate as they should be to understand what the dynamics are in Guyana, because the development is clear to see where this country is going, the trajectory of the country, what the government's intentions are, but the reality or the alternate facts created by certain media entities paints a different picture that is very much confusing. Recently been letter in the papers, Retimaya, and I look at these individuals, being a person who has been in the struggle, who's been in the fight in this country. I look at these persons and I ask myself, where do they come from? Who are they? What have they done? Can you speak to some of these issues? Who you more than anybody else, a lot of times the attacks are focused toward you.
Right.
Can you speak to some of these?
Well, I think it's very perceptive of you to recognize that often these press conferences, although they're designed to share information with people, they don't achieve that purpose, largely because some reporters from particular entities come there with fixed agendas. And their agenda is not to discover the truth or to report on what's happening in our country. Their agenda is to distort. And often it's personally frustrating because you know that whatever you say, whatever explanation you give, and no matter how often you give those explanations, that they'll never be reflected in, like the Kaicho News or some other entities, accurately. There's always a twist, or they add their own editorial view, which is often jaundiced and anti-government, and to twist the entire story. So people say, why bother? Why do this? And I believe we owe it to the people of the country to do it. I don't share your view that people are illiterate, so they're misled. I believe that they believe, and this has worked well in the past, that these news entities that often have a political agenda, they believe by repetition that people would actually start believing what they hear. And they're so incessant that sometimes people do even people who are functionally literate and people who are knowledgeable, because they hear it often enough, they start reflexively believing these things. So if you hear this happened before 2015, that Jagdeo owned shares in the Marriott, and for 6 months every day in the newspapers, in spite of our explanations that and to the contrary, then you actually start believing it, because this is in print. This is every day in the newspapers. And even today, like now, Glenn Lal still persists with that rumor, although Apnu was in office for 5 years and discovered the Marriott is 100% owned by the government of Guyana. He recently said there were secret investors that Jagdeo had there. I challenge him to bring the secret investors. I'll resign if he does so. Never surfaced with the secret investors or the names, and he still persists with the rumor. Since people, by sheer weight of repetition, starts believing. And it happened with so many other things. The stadium, the Berbice Bridge, almost everything. So they believe that they can do the same again. And that is why we have a robust defense. Sometimes it's repetitive, but we have to be out there saying it all the time, because people would start believing some of these things if you don't respond every single day. And we have a duty to the people of this country to point out the design. And their design is that a lot of the haters, the PPP haters, or those who have lost perks because the government changed, or those who are aligned to the opposition, politically aligned, they come in the guise of the conscience of society. So every day they're writing in the newspapers, oh, we want the greatest good for Guyana. We want accountability. Some of them are the worst examples of corruption and lack of accountability when they're in office. And they had no concern about any Guyanese, including Afro-Guyanese that they often profess that they believe in, they're fighting for. You've seen, you just mentioned this Aubrey Rettimeyer. I saw the last few days he's been cussing me. Who is this guy? He was some ex-army guy who went to the US. When the government changed, they brought him back. He was, from what we gathered, doing security guard duties overseas. He then became the deputy head of SARA. His remuneration was over $1 million a month, the total package. The parliament was supposed to appoint the director and deputy director for SARA. The director was Clive Thomas. He signed the contract for Clive Thomas, and Clive Thomas signed the contract for him as deputy director. So he, as deputy, appointed the director, and then the director appointed him, bypassing the parliament. They spent millions of dollars. They never recovered a cent. He was the one who was trying to get, working with Felix, you recall, at the Critchfield Labour College, trying to get some Nigerians, they were trying to get people to register and to be part of the electoral process here. So clearly he hates me with a passion. He hates the PPP. And because he has lost his perk, over $1 million a month for doing practically nothing for 5 years. You think he cared anything about Afro-Guyanese in that period? What did he do for single Afro-Guyanese? The GHK Lal now, he's criticizing, I saw he's criticizing Joel Bagwandin for exposing the shenanigans, and there were numerous shenanigans under his tenure at the gold board, when a lot of illegalities were committed, including giving contracts to people and licensing a large number of dealers without the due diligence, a whole range of issues. So now that it's coming to light, he suddenly thinks, oh, the government is targeting him. But this is the person who has had the vilest things ad hominem, that's personal attacks against people. I saw now today he's begging that, oh, I'm a servant of the people, and all I want is the good for Guyana.
A man who once presented himself as a Wall Street analyst. Now has boiled down to being a servant.
Right, yes, no, well, I see he dropped the Wall Street Journal analyst thing from his name, but this is how they operate. So as I said before, there are a lot of people who will be haters, and they occupy this space in the newspapers. They're very vocal, not because they care about a cause. People like Mosley, who distorts everything. What the president said last week, Mosley was opposed to President Ali, saying, oh, he's short-sighted, he didn't want to, he's capricious, he didn't want to meet, he repudiated with Norton, he repudiated the offer by the U.S. ambassador. President Ali dealt with that issue. Yesterday, press conference, I said President Ali has indicated every single time, several times, that he will meet with the opposition leader on any issue relating to the Constitution without any precondition. That is in the discharge of his responsibilities as president according to the Constitution. However, he repeats the party position. Irfan Ali is a member of the PPP and in the leadership of the PPP. If you want to talk about other matters outside of government business, and what do they want to talk about? They want to claim falsely that Afro-Guyanese are being discriminated against, and that they are coming to solve this question of inclusion. They want to get a seat at the table on the basis of a false premise, and President Ali must now say, yes, let me accept this false premise and let me meet with them. And that is what he said that when he spoke about the U.S. ambassador. The U.S. ambassador, as I pointed out, didn't make an offer. It was Gordon Mosley who was pushing her, and she said, oh, we do whatever we can to help. But it was based on his false narrative. But when exposed, so I exposed that. Today, he says, oh, it's Jagdeo. President Ali wanted to meet with Norton. Suddenly last week, he didn't want to meet. He was capricious. He wanted to meet. But Jagdeo doesn't want him to meet now. So this is trying to sow divisions. Of course, that's not going to work. I know Irfan Ali, and we know what we're working towards. A country that everybody would be proud of. And we're working based on a PPP agenda, which we established before the elections. So there is no conflict, but they're trying now hard. And Mosley, imagine suddenly he's concerned about the PPP. So false narrative. Vincent Alexander, the same thing. False narrative, 40% of the people of Guyana are not part of the decision-making process. It's utter nonsense. We've had more inclusion in this government than anything else. But what we will not do is discriminate against Indo-Guyanese or Amerindian Guyanese or mixed Guyanese to just satisfy a PNC agenda, elitist agenda, not even an agenda to help ordinary Afro-Guyanese, but to help them, an elite who have, like the Retimaias and the others, who have enjoyed the perks of office. The people like the Figueres or the Amanza Walton or the Lowenfields, who have gotten large tracts of land when ordinary people couldn't get a piece of land, of any race for that matter. We're not into that. And so they're going to continue railing against the PP government every day because we robustly defend ourselves. And we will continue to do so. We're going to continue to expose them, no matter no matter what they claim. Victimhood, suddenly they're victims, etc. Since when the PPP has victimized anyone for speaking their mind? We have Glenn Lal, we had Sien Sharma all these years. You see them still in the landscape, all of them speaking their minds openly. We brought back freedom of the opinion into this country, but more importantly, we brought freedom generally to Guyana. No other party has done that. We fought for it. And their track record, PNC, is one of subjugation, stealing elections. So I don't see any problem with us saying, before you talk about executive involvement, in whatever form, you have to repudiate your stealing elections as a tool for getting into office. That is an absolute precondition. 2, you have to move away from racism. They have a racist policy that would have seen Indo-Guyanese and Amerindians and mixed people in this country having no place here. They're a racist organization. They have to change that. And thirdly, they have to work on an agenda to develop all of Guyana, all of our people. Those are essential preconditions. We have no qualms about stating them, and they're essential for any engagement. But we will engage, as the President Ali said, he will engage with anything on dealing with the Constitution. We don't violate the Constitution of the country. So you've seen a lot. So those press conferences, often you don't get to deal with some of the people's issues. It's always something else and a twist to it.
Dr. Jagdeo, the stance that yourself, the President, government, and the PPP has taken is one of a democratic nature. There's something in the news, and you address that through press conferences. For the most part, I'm supposing with the apparatus that the government have access to, you would be aware that persons like Glenn Lal are deliberate. It's not accidental. A lot of these, like Glenn Lal, he has a political narrative now. And I want to play a recording that I received. I recently received. And this is some of the whisper campaigns that go on at the bottom house meetings. And people are told and made promises that obviously can't be spoken about in public because they're so elaborated, it doesn't make sense. This is a recording. This is what Glenn Lal is feeding persons to feed others in certain areas. Just listen to this.
You know what Glenn Lal said? If Jagged only been signed and put ring fencing for Lisa 1 and Lisa 2, starting from 2023, all of it, when I collect $5 million every year. You understand me tell you that? All of it, when I collect $5 million every year, all of it, when I come rich by. But I'm man one thing. But let me tell you, when this work is done, all who got dead from this work, right, the name of other in textbook and thing. And I'm going to make posts and put them up in Island Village where for them do them get dead, the father can dead, so that the future generation all of the children and grandchildren, because they who been a fight for the change about the contract for make this country rich. Because when Glenn Lal going to win in 2025, he's going to give this money. $1 million every month. You understand? That's $12 million a year. So whoever father can dead, right, then we'll go up and about change of Island public place name. We'll put somebody where, somebody about rename the place and then the people them were dead. So, and I'll go teach in school. I'll go in a fight for change of the contract and then dead.
No, there's a short, just to complete this.
Yeah, right. So if anybody follow content and I keep fast and work now, right? That goes a strong message for Jagdeo change the contract. You understand? And you have to start from Kaishin or something. Then I get paid for work, so I got to work, and if they don't want work, then go get fired. Think you understand?
So, obviously, the intention
is-
here, yes, it's
That's very shocking. I never heard that sort of thing before.
worrying because this individual would have been implanted with an idea or an intention to create martyrs. Because if we're going to walk, if we're going to have a walk, we're going to have a walk. You have the right to protest in this country. People are always protesting in this country for all kinds of different reasons. But Glenn Lal seems bent and intent on creating some kind of a disaster that is going to initiate something in this country. And it comes out in the papers. The photographs, I've met a few people that Glenn Lal have been photographing, protesting, having placards, and I've met them and I've asked them and they have told me that they have received money to do it. I said, why you do it? Do you have an understanding of what's going on? And we have recordings and they'll be doing a compilation of these different individuals to come forward and do an exclusive interview with them. The intention from what we're hearing on this recording is obviously deliberate and malicious. Will the PPP stance remain one that just answers the question, or will your administration make a special effort really to protect the people? This is dangerous. These people are willing to kill people to get what they want. It happened in the past. It happened with the Crummy E-Wings, and you see things happen close to election time, and it's worrying as to what Glenn Lal's motive and people such as himself, their motives are. And is the PPP intention just to be answering to these malicious, the information is being put out there, or addressing it frontally in some other way?
So first of all, we have to be aware, I think, more about the whisper campaigns. I think we have spent a lot of time working to restore this country to viability after the disaster of the 5 years. Getting more people jobs. You just saw the IDB report. Today I met with the IMF. Massive numbers of people employed since the days that they were losing jobs in droves, not just sugar workers, but every sector now. Probably in excess of 60,000 people more who are now working at that time.
A positive that is not adequately reflected in the media.
Reflected. Part-time workers, more in mining, more in construction. 20,000 people are in construction. That never used to happen. We've done that. We have put together in 3 years the entire framework that we promised to manage the oil and gas industry better. And it required a lot of work. Reform of the Natural Resources Fund. We have put in place a local content law that they refused to put in place. 400 million US of business to 1,500 firms already we got. We just, new PSA, new Petroleum Act. We now we're closing an auction. We have reformed almost every one of the licenses we have issued to strengthen the environmental conditions, the safety conditions, getting more data. That was done to have a better management of the industry. We came in, we earned already from the forestry sector $750 million a contract. Amerindians have gotten more money in 1 year from that, and they only got 15% of it than they had in 5 years in APNU, leaving out the government-funded programs. I can go on. We put together 12 new hospitals that are starting now. In just 3 years, the bridge, nearly 150 kilometers of 4-lane roads we're starting. We're repaving all the bridges that are going to let him. I can give you, we're now doing 10 new schools this year. We've been busy doing this sort of thing whilst another group of people have been busy trying to cover up their own records of mismanagement, and another group misleading people deliberately, like the Glenlalls, because they have an agenda. So we are a bit deficient in that sometimes we don't answer things enough, like this recording. I know they have a whisper campaign, but I didn't know the depth of the depravity, the depth of the nastiness that they will go to mislead people. Now clearly it's Glenlal and a little cabal that wants to form a political party. So you heard, they're already telling this guy, a political party, that's one, when Glenlal wins in 2025. So he's claiming, no, he's a reporter, he wants to expose government, and he wants to change the oil contract, but he wants to form a party. He told this guy this. Too healthy misleading. So I just listened. This man said, I did not ring fence Liza 1 and Liza 2. Jagdeo didn't ring fence those. And if I had ring fenced it, everybody would have been rich. They would all be rich. Now the fact is that we didn't issue the license for Liza 1 or Liza 2. They were issued when we're in opposition. And the contract with Exxon, the new production contract, was done by APNO. So now people think Jagdeo did not ring fence these two, prevented them from getting rich. Then he goes on to say, when Glenlal wins, they'll get $1 million a month, 12 million a year. Imagine every person, that's more than, it's about 50 times more than the money we are collecting now. But he promised them $1 million a month, 12 million a year. That's 12 million, 60,000 US. A year you would get that, every Guyanese. You can't get that from working in the US, much less the government giving you that. And the US is the biggest economy in the world, the richest. But this clown believes it and would mislead other people into believing this. And it's a part of a careful design. And then he goes on. You hear what he said about the Kaichor News staff. The guy said that Kaichor News staff are paid to protest, walk, and if they don't come out, they'll be fired. So that's a political entity. That ceases to be a newspaper. It's now a political entity. So a lot of these things about people dropping down their names will be in textbooks.
Intention is to create martyrs.
Martyrs, but there's a set of clowns, you know. So it sounds foolish. Nobody with sense would believe this guy. But a lot of people, he goes, if they whisper it enough in the villages and around the country, and they pay some people to do that, then people might be seduced by it, to believe that only Glenlal is fighting for the country. But the fact is that this guy is not fighting for anything. He doesn't even understand ring fencing. Glenlal doesn't understand it, much less this poor, misguided soul. So it is something that we have to tackle more aggressively, because every day this guy, for me, I look at the daily programs like this TikTok and I say, nobody would believe this. It's so stupid. But then I hear people repeating it. And then they say, oh, we ain't got no money from the oil and gas sector too. It's because he's saying to them, oh, you haven't got anything from the oil and gas sector. Jagdeo didn't give you anything extra, walking away with all the money. So for 3-4 days running, the man says, Jagdeo told the two shows that their pensions will go up by $7,000, that's all they'll get, and that the school children will get $10,000. Well, what I said is that to the two shows, since we got in, we promised before we got into office to double old age pension in the 5 years and to restore the children grant and increase it to $50,000 per child per year. We're already at $40,000, and so they will get another $10,000 before 2025, by 2025. The $50,000 per child will be over $10 billion per year. That is what they will get that they were not getting on the APNU, and their families will get. He says, Jagdeo said,
add on 10,000 a year.
Yes, so that we already did
50,000.
40, but he's saying to them, he said to the pensioners, only 7,000 you will get. But they already got from 2020 a 13,000 increase. So which part of the world in 5 years you double old age pension? And know how much that will cost? Just the increase by moving it from 20 to 40,000 a month, $20 billion. The two alone will be $30 billion going to our school children and to the pensioners. And that's over nearly 300,000 people, because we have 200 and something thousand children and about 74,000 pensioners. And those on public assistance who will get an increase. So he just says that. Misleading people for days. Jagdeo says 7,000 is all you'll get from oil money. So as a bunch of lies misrepresenting what we actually say to people. And this goes on incessantly every single day in the newspapers.
But Dr. Jagdeo, again, the question is, will your response be limited to just answering these questions because it could become tiring? For me, who is somebody in the media landscape, I get frustrated, and it might be because of my short temper personally, but I get frustrated having to, I was told that the Marriott was a failure. Then I read in the same paper that it was a success and it was being sold cheap. I was told that the Berbice Bridge was a failure and it wouldn't work, and it was a rape of the country. I have seen, and I've traveled to Berbice. I traveled to Berbice in recent times on a weekly basis, and that would have been a tiring process.
The families used to, without that bridge, people will come, they bring their family to the airport, and they would arrive in New York. The plane would leave Guyana, arrive in New York, and people were waiting in a long line at the Stelling still to cross to get back home. So you leave Guyana, get into New York, and they're still waiting to get back home. It used to be atrocious. But the same Marriott. So you said, failure, then great success, then we shouldn't sell it out. Then when we went to bid, we got two bids, 55 million and 65 million. He says we should give it to the Guyanese for 55 million. We said no, the bids were too low. We went out back, we got 90 billion. They said we wouldn't get another bid. We got a 90 million US bid. Now he's saying we're giving it away again. And he was advocating selling it for 55 million. That is the madness of it all. And people listen to this. So you ask me, what are we going to do? We are a free society. And sometimes it's bothersome. Sometimes I say, personally, I'm general secretary of a party, and I've worked all my life on initiatives to change this country. I've seen when we had no money, and I see where we are today. I've seen a lot of people put in effort. Irfan Ali, lots of ministers that started the housing program. I see what he does on a daily basis to work hard, going out every day, working. And then I think sometimes when I see some of these comments, I say, maybe we should let some of these people have another dose of apnu. Because personally, I don't need it. You know, have a good dose of apnu, because some of them have short memories. And maybe they need a long dose of apnu. So, but then again,
Just
you can't.
the thought of what you're saying
No,
about
no, no,
Dr.
no, no.
Jagdeo has brought a sense of hopelessness over me.
No. But then I think again about all the people who depend on us. And I say we have to fight. Take, for example, the sugar workers. Some of them. Look what APNU did. Practically every promise they made, they broke. They promised to expand, not to close the industry, they closed it. Sent home 7,000 workers, sell off the assets, borrowed against it, used the money for swimming pool, all that sort of thing. Gave away some of the assets to political people. Then said that it was a black hole. Ramjatan and the others, that this industry has no future in Guyana, was running down the estates to remain, to shut down the whole industry. Zero salary increase in 5 years. They removed the annual production incentive that had been there since Burnham days. No jobs, nothing. No future for the industry. We came back, we're working at it. Rehiring people, salary increases, etc. Then you have a protest by some workers now. They want severance. They haven't been severed. And they then went to the man, the people, the architect of the destruction, Ramjatan, to come to bring them to us. And I'm thinking, why are we bothering sometimes? But then I think it's just a small group and we have to work for the others, not this group here. Because they have no understanding. I can tell you, I traveled to the sugar belt in that period. Gloom and doom. People didn't have things to eat, a whole range, many families. We quietly helped by distributing stuff, but because with no pictures.
Suicide rates had gone
Right,
up
suicide
at that time.
rate, all sorts of things. The whole of Barbies in depression. And people don't remember that. You don't, Ramjatan should not have been able to show his face and a person like Derek Basdale in those areas, the whole crooks. And they're still up holier than thou now, and they're lecturing us. Ramjatan said a couple months ago that putting money into sugar is a waste of time, has no future, and that's it. So you listen to that. Like people buy this narrative, some others. I went and I was speaking to a group of people. A lot of them are our supporters. They said, since the PPP came into office, they didn't get anything. So we just completed a road. They had a mud dam, a road that cost $50 million to build on a mud dam, 30 households there. I said to them, if you divide $50 million by the 30 households, it's like $1.5 million per household we're spending here on this road. Where do you think the money came from? It's not like taxes. We're just building in the community one. The hospital will be a major hospital, will not be like within stone throw away from them. That will cost $30 million US dollars and have CT scan, etc. And still they're saying nothing. 30,000 people more have gotten house lots. But a level of greed too. So like you have some people getting part-time job, some getting a business grant, some might get something, roads in the community. But one man wants the grant, he wants the job, he wants the scholarship, he wants everything. Sometimes that level of greed. And they don't see the magnitude of what we're trying to address. 17,000 people studying now. Under APNU, they couldn't even get a scholarship. And so this is the sort of thing that sometimes when you go out, they demoralize you. You hear the gripe all the time about among some people. But that perspective, and that is why I said sometimes in the 5 years they never saw APNU in their community. You know. We've had 4 or 5 visits from ministers talking to them, etc. But still, it's like that. And therefore, we have to do more to educate people. You can't criticize and say, oh, we give up. Because if we give up there, where will this country be? If the PPP had given up, where would this country have been? On the freedom front, we would have had no freedom, impunity. The ministers, you saw how they behave under APNU. They would have been even more arrogant. Never went out, never met anybody. Irfan Ali goes out every day, meets with everybody, and he gets criticized for it. Granger was people had to take pictures with his cardboard image, his own supporters, when he goes to a rally. And people forget that. And then Irfan Ali gets criticized that he shouldn't be doing that now. Oh, this is a representative democracy. He must meet Norton if he wants to go into Makkah. He must talk to Norton or the chairman of the village there, who will try to prevent any development from going in these communities. This is the sort of thing that we're confronted with. And if the PP had given up, we wouldn't been free. And this oil money or no oil money, what you're seeing now happening, the growth and the dynamism and the housing and new 7 hotels and 12 hospitals and new highways and all of that, community roads, 2,000 community roads, all of that. None of it would have been there. None of it. They have an enormous capacity to spend money on things that don't matter. Look at the 5 years. They reduce capital expenditure in 5 years and increase spending on themselves, recurrent budget, by 70-something%. Raise the taxes, did everything. They would have just furthered away the industry. So our job is to educate, and talk to people, and hope that others too, because people have a stake in this country. Everyone. You have a stake. You have a family here. Everybody have family. They have to take this on too, because if we allow a few, the Retty Myers and the G.H.K. Lal, who've lived from a different era, and the gripers of the past, that, the group that lives abroad, that calls themselves Oil and Gas Network, or try to sabotage the LCDS, all of them live abroad, and they have the dope span crew, etc. You think our country will make progress? Everybody has to take this on. That's why I say to those who support us, they have to get into the battle too on Facebook and everywhere else. Because if they don't, the Burkes and the others will define this country, and they would mislead a lot of people. So
Dr. Jagdeo, recently, and just to take you back a little bit, recently I asked a question about Tony Blair's visit here, and you went back a bit in history, the role you played and Guyana played in the development, of poor countries moving forward. Recently, on the sidelines, I witnessed you finding out about the budget for a corner. Some roads were being done between Lamaha and another corner. I think it's Carmichael Street. And you were finding out who's doing this and what was the budget and so on. And I said to you, man, what concern is that of yours? The country is being beautified. And you said, critic, 1992 time, the whole budget of an NDC was $47 million. So you come from an era where there were real hardships in making this happen, the reality and real building. Now, yes, there's a bit more of money, but you still use that prudence to make sure the money is spent well. Tell us a little bit about the times when it was really hard to get roads, basic roads done. What was projects like in that time? I think too many Guyanese forget that.
So that issue there, I think we were driving down government. So I was finding out why this area, who made the decision. And I couldn't get an answer, a clear answer from Public Works, because it's a tiny piece of the avenue. And I wanted to know what is so special about this area and not another area. For me, when we spend resources, it has to benefit the largest possible numbers of people. And it must serve a social purpose. But here is it that a decision was made to utilize these funds, which would help a limited number of businesses here or entities. And as you said, in the early days, that was equivalent to the budget, the capital budget of a region, not an NDC. You just said NDC.
A region.
A whole region.
One of the 10 regions.
A little sum of money that we spend now was responsible for the capital budget of a region. We had a hard time because you had no money. The debt servicing was taking up all of revenue. All of our revenue. We were declared uncreditworthy by the IMF to borrow. Our debt servicing was more than the loans and the grants and revenue sometimes. So it's unbelievable situation. We're totally bankrupt. I was telling you about the meeting with the IMF today, and we were talking about our debt numbers, which look great today. And we had cause to mention, and Ashley said to me, I told him about the early days, because he had not come into finances yet in those early days. He was a young guy. And so that is how it was. So people, we couldn't build a lot of the roads. We had to select. We were doing chip seal. Sometimes you couldn't do a double surface. So you had to do a single one. The people that with little tar on it. So when the trucks drive on it, quickly the pebbles will come off, because you couldn't have enough money to complete a road. And everybody wanted roads and stuff like that. So we've come a long way from a whole range of, in almost every sector. And what I see today is that we need to exercise the same level of caution. If anybody believes, that's why when you raise expectations on Julie, a man says, we'll give you $12 million a year if I win the elections. Free, every Guyanese. You got to start thinking among yourself, is this possible? So people are setting themselves up for disappointment, to be used. And Norton saying, we will do this. They couldn't do a lot of stuff when they got into office. They will destroy the economy once again. The reason by the 90s we became the poorest country in the hemisphere, close to Haiti, was because of the lack of proper economic policies. and the unwillingness of people to steer you, the policy makers, stare the people of the country in their faces and talk straight to them without all the frills and tell people where they stand. If you work, which we say now, if you work hard, you will get the full support. We'd help you on the business side, we'd help you with a part-time job, we'd help you with a scholarship, we'd help with a house lot, we'd hope higher paying jobs. We will be there with better health care, better education. We will be there to support you. But we can't tell you not to work and that you get free oil money and that some foreigner stealing your money and all kinds of things. It's not true. And people say the great things. That's why most parties don't fulfill their manifesto, because they overpromise. Remember in 2015, the AFC promised, and APNU promised, in 100 days they would double old age pension. We said 5 years, and we're doing it. They said 100 days. Of course, nothing happened. We don't overpromise, but whatever we promise there, we deliver on. And so, because we've had that long history and sticking with a lot of these issues, I don't want to go down memory lane today, because it is, maybe at some time in the future we should talk a lot about that, about from where we came and how we were a bankrupt country. We're a country that nobody looked to. We couldn't get investments. The reason we had to build a Marriott is because we could not get an investor to build a hotel. The other hotel that was built by Buddies with concession, and then he sold it out to Ramada.
And only in recent times we find 9 investors.
7 hotels are going up now, and another 3 will start. And those days, nobody wanted to invest in a hotel. And we had to get hotel, we had to get a stadium, we had to get a bridge, and we had to be creative about finding money to do all of this when we didn't have, and we had to pay back the debts too. And we moved our country along. If you look at the progression, long before we found oil, some of the best housing schemes, and we developed Amelia's Ward, Block 22, Diamond, Eccles, Fowles. I can name large numbers of schemes. Tushin, Parfait, Harmony, Borbies, every part of the country. And that is with very limited resources because of creativity.
Dr. Jagdeo, given the vision that has obviously come out with the Marriott and the Berbice Bridge, where do you think Guyana would have been today if the Amelia Falls project was given an opportunity to be completed?
They killed that. The lies that they told about Amelia Falls. First of all, that the cost of electricity would double. In fact, at that time, the cost of electricity was 30 cents per kilowatt hour. We are going to buy power at 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Our cost of generation was over 20 cents. So it would have cut the prices by half. That's the first thing. Next thing, Glenn Lal ran a campaign that, it would dry the river. That is why you build a reservoir. Every country in the world has a reservoir. So in the low season, you have water in the reservoir, etc. And the peak, you would have had more power, but at the lowest period, you would have had more power than what we supply through the whole GPL now. So they killed it. Then they said, Clive Thomas and the others, that we had a $2 billion debt. There was no debt because we were not owning the fall, we were buying power. The investors owned the fall. All we had was a contingent liability where we guarantee the price that GPL will pay the bill when they receive power. There was absolutely no debt to that. We did all the
The GPN would
environmental.
have been able to service because they already had the
Right,
customers.
because they had the customers and they were getting cheaper power because it was costing them 20 cents per kilowatt hour to generate. Now they would get it at 10 cents per kilowatt hour. So even if they drop it from 30 cents to 20 cents per kilowatt hour, they were still making
Service
margin.
the customer better and also make
More
profit.
And all of that. And there would have been renewable energy. 2, they killed it. Lies after lies after lies. That would have started producing in 2017. Since 2017, we would have had cheaper power, stable power. So they kill a miler, and then you would think that the demand for power is growing, more population, more people are building homes, they're putting in AC, more business. So you will be investing, because if you're not getting a miler now, you have to replace it with something else. What did they do in 5 years? Nothing. They just put a small power plant that they bought from Germany in Essequibo Coast, nothing here. After the no confidence motion, they used money to pay for a power plant. There was no urgency, illegally took money from the fund because there was no budget from the consolidated fund, and pay some money for a power plant, 46 megawatt, to Wärtsilä. Up to now, we have a hard time. We had to install it. We have a hard time now getting the full thing to operate. It wasn't operating well because due diligence wasn't done. Then we've had to buy emergency power, like some small units, to keep this going. Now we're buying 17 1x7 megawatt power plants to tide us over another maybe 27 megawatts of power, and that has to come in before December, emergency power. So hopefully it will carry us until the gas to energy project is completed. So we're not stranded with a big new fossil fuel power plant or a long-term power purchase agreement. We've had to hustle. They told me a couple days ago, after we refurbish a lot of the sets, etc., our install capacity now is about 170 something megawatts of power, and the peak demand because of this heat and the people turn on AC, etc., it's 172 megawatts. So our capacity and demand are close to each other. So if one unit has to go off for maintenance, etc., and that is all because of short-sightedness on the APNO. They didn't invest in that. They invested in buying hundreds of millions of vehicles for ministers and a whole range of things, but never in power supply. So now we have to struggle until that project is completed. And now they're trying to sabotage even that project, like they sabotage Amila, the gas to energy project. So this is the nature of the APNO. They don't plan for the future. They operate like a cake shop. And then you have to come back and pick up the pieces. We've had to come back and pick up the pieces again and try to form a coherent strategy around the delivery of power to people. We're struggling right now, struggling to keep the lights on because of the lack of investment. You got to make investments. These things come with a lag. What affects you today is a decision you did or did not make 3 years ago or 4 years ago. That is how it works in these sectors. So the lack of decision making there and that period haunts us up to today.
Dr. Jagdeo, on that note, I think it's left a positive message for Guyanese. I want to thank you again for this opportunity in clearing up and bringing a level of transparency, unprecedented level of transparency to Guyanese. And I'm hoping, as usual, we could do more of this. And I'm hoping this has been very edifying for Guyanese. Once again, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Jagdeo.
Right. Welcome.